Welcome back, everyone, to the start of the Deadlock Fight Night Pacific, brought to you by Intel. I'm Jason Kaplan. Well, I would say your host normally, because I'm used to saying that when I'm with the man to my left-hand side. But we have a crazy day of action coming your way. We've only been able to see things when it's mostly been EU and North America, but I'm excited to dive into Pacific. What about you, Blink?
I'm good. Yeah, I was just trying to wrap my head around being the left and the right there for a second. You really confused me. Luckily, it's not too early in the morning, but I'm ready to go. Deadlock Fight Night Pacific. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool that I'm here as well, isn't it, Jason? Obviously. But yeah, some really cool teaser we got with us here today. We got qualifiers going through just a couple of days ago. Some interesting builds, some strong plays, and one clear number one seed, I would say.
Yeah, clear number one seed, who's actually going to be waiting over in the finals. But before we can get to that, for you out there who might not be familiar with what Deadlock Fight Night is about, it's about getting the best teams from each region to get together to play against each other and take on our reigning king, which this week it will be Egotists, as they are going to be sitting in first place due to a qualifier that happened just previously. Egoisto. It's always hard for me to say. And just to remind you guys, so the ADP Super League, it was 7 teams all playing head-to-head in a round-robin format, and our top 5 teams would get through to play up here in DFN. Egoisto, who went 6-0, won the entire thing. Of course, going to be sitting as our reigning champion, even though we technically don't have a champion. But this leads us into Avengers versus OT and Maiden Deadlock up against Happy Buffalo. Blank.
Yeah, so I think our first game is probably going to be the most, let's say, not clear cut, because this is our 3rd and 4th seed going up against one another. Happy Buffaloes and Maiden Deadlock, that will be our 5th and 2nd seed, with Mid being our 2nd, Happy Buffaloes being our 5th. So I'm excited to see what Avengers and OT are able to bring out here. They have a pretty wide hero pool, a lot of these teams, which is quite curious. I think you a lot of times we'll see usually one main picks here and there, but even within those picks, you play your bruisers, you pick off heroes like Paradox, but here they're playing all sorts. You're having a player that's on Wraith and then on Paradox. For me, it's a little strange, but I like the fact that they have a lot of different heroes they can pull out here on the stage.
Well, one thing we have seen when it comes to, I want to say, like Pacific and Asia in general, in esports, in newer games, they tend to fall behind in the beginning and they eventually become the super powerhouse. And speaking of powerhouses, we got to bring in our analyst here to start talking about these teams of DDK, because he's had firsthand experience, of course, in the likes of CS. We're starting to see more of these Asian teams rise up through the ranks and be, potential contenders for these top spots. I'm hoping to see something similar for Deadlock, but one thing has proved to be clear here, Dan. The pick order they're going for, the build orders they're going for, are definitely not similar to what we've had in EU and NA.
And that's what we want, Jason. We want the diversity here and how to play the game, how to think about the game. And that's something that, especially at this point of a new game in Deadlock, we don't have this like globalized meta yet where everyone's following one region necessarily. A lot of it's more reactionary in terms of, what are the other teams doing in my region? And that, I think, is super fun and interesting to follow. And given that now we have the privilege to kind of check out each individual region, we get to kind of contrast and compare. And I think that's super fun. So I'm here for it.
Gets me excited for what we potentially could see down the line with some of these teams playing up against the best of EU and North America. But to kind of get you guys all caught up a little bit, I know this is a newer region for a lot of people out there. It's not really easy to see their scrims or see any events that happen. We do have a souls per minute leaderboard from the qualifiers that just concluded a few days ago to get you familiar with some of these names that you're going to see in here. And off the bat, seeing Tornado plays on Avengers, he's going to be playing in this first match. He has such, in my opinion, a massive gap over these other teams. And it's not like they went 6-0 in the qualifier. They went 4-2, so they still lost some matches, but for him to have over 150 soul per minute gap over some of these other players is kind of ridiculous to me, Blank.
Yeah, I think it's sort of understandable considering how he plays on the Shiv and the Infernus. I mean, he's a heavy farmer at the end of the day, especially on the Shiv. They can cold front very early on and then just like annihilating the jungle. Well, that's essentially what that guy did a lot of times. But he gave him such a lead early on that it was quite hard to deal with him. I think he kind of builds a lot of 500 items early on and then just starts to take it away. But then again, I think on Shiv, especially these days, people are trying to build more into the dagger. It kind of makes sense that he can hit that number. Still impressive, I would say. Fax Fox is the one that I was more interested in, considering he's more of a Warden player. He was still getting a ton done around the map, but having a soul count of 1227 is very impressive to me.
And Dan, the last time I think I saw this kind of layout, just to quickly go back to Tornado, I kind of remember of Lefa actually with Hydrogenation when it comes to like North America and actually I think globally at the time. But a couple of other names in there as well. Adam, we're going to see him with OT for the first match. But I don't know. I'm really just kind of curious to see how this souls per minute does translate into the game. And one number we always look at as well is like how much damage are you getting per soul that you gain for yourself? And I can tell you, Tornado, he's really not that high up there when it comes to player damage.
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting to see sort of by the numbers how this turns out. I feel like, you know, on the analysis, we've got to make good data-driven decisions, but the sample size is pretty low at this point, Jason. So we can get pretty wacky with our predictions. I don't know if there's do we have like super fan favorite players already in this region, or do you feel like that's still a developing story? Are we going to help to build that?
I think, Blake, there's like two teams, Egoisto and Mid for me. Like Mid and Deadlock coming from South Korea. I feel like they are looked at as one of the best teams for sure. And then of course, Egoisto is kind of a conglomeration of a couple of different regions. I think Japan's in there. You have Australia in there. And I do believe, I don't actually know, it's Hong Kong and Singapore all mixed in. So they've got a real hodgepodge of different talent in this roster.
Jason,
it works,
I need to interrupt you. Look at what I have. This mug. Excuse the watermarks.
Oh my god!
But we got that merch on lock.
Was that?
Look at that! Look at the segue.
It's pretty cool.
It wasn't even the run of show, but we're rolling with it anyways. You guys can pick up some Fight Night merch. Head over to deadlockfightnight.com and pick up some sweet things yourself. We also do have, I believe, more than this, if I'm not mistaken. We've got like Calico in there, some really cool ideas. Make sure you guys pick this up, and not to mention anything you guys do buy here gets put directly back in the show. It doesn't go in anyone's pockets, especially not mine, even though I'm sporting my hat here. This is one of my favorite gym hats, actually. Big fan.
That was instantaneous. Where'd you even pull
almost
that
as
from?
if I had it in reach. It's almost.
All right. You got like the whole merch collection just on your desk at all times. I want to see you do that with a hoodie. Yeah, give him 3 seconds to put a hoodie on.
I mean, with guns like this, I don't know if I can, but Dan.
Oh,
he's got the hoodie as well. Oh man, I'm
you
a little
didn't commit
sad.
though. I'm disappointed. It
felt awkward.
Well, don't worry. I mean, he is the most handsome person we have here on the desk at the moment until we get ZP later on today. But speaking of getting things going, let's actually jump into our first match of the day of Avengers up against OT and take a look at the roster these two teams are fielding for us. We look at OT coming in from Australia. We're starting off with Avengers here, if I can read correctly. My favorite player, which I think we can all agree, looking at the roster here, of course, will be Cake-F, because who doesn't love cake?
I thought you were going to say ass man.
It's too easy to say that one.
Yeah, it's just me.
I mean, the cheek on ass man to call himself that is unreal, but I respect it. You know, he's coming in.
Get clapped. This is what we're going to do, guys. We're going to just puns the whole time, aren't we?
Yes, obviously. Why wouldn't you at this point? I'm curious about Anan more than anything, honestly. He's got Calico on here, but he did play a ton of McGuinness. And I think McGuinness is kind of sort of that unknown pick. But if you can play around it and get a lot of support done, especially if you've got a Warden on the team, you can hunt down players using the wall a lot of times. Pretty interesting player. And I think that, Cake, everybody loves Cake. This guy's good. We know that. We know Tornado's good. But I'm curious to see how Anan actually makes that McGuinness pick work if he brings it out again, because he does have a Kelvin pocket pick as well.
Yeah, just to remind people who are watching, this is not what was picked. We have not done the draft yet. These are just some heroes we're throwing up just to make the graphic look extra nice for you. But speaking of extra nice, let's head over to OT side and see the roster they're fielding for us as well, because there's a couple of names in here. It was after my time working on the game, but there are some Overwatch pros here. I believe in the likes of Adam, played with Honeypot actually.
Yeah, way back when. We were talking a while ago, but yeah, Adam is in here. Typical Wraith player, honestly, for him, as well as the Infernus. So a lot of split pushing going on for this guy in those outer lanes, which is fair enough. He's getting work done, and he certainly was done in those matches. Quite difficult to shut him down. For some of these other guys, but we've got a resident Assman type, a random dead dude, which I'm not sure I'm going to get all that out in the middle of a cast, but we'll see how it goes, as well as Slattered, who was pretty significant in terms of the front line for that team. So this is again an exciting team to watch, but this is our 4th seed alongside with our 5th seed Happy Buffaloes, and I think the Avengers might have a little bit of an edge on this team.
This is really interesting, because I'm like, wait, I think I know a random dead dude, but like not personally, but I've seen that name before, and I think it's like there's like an aim coach by that name. I know, so I'm not sure if it's the same person, but I feel like it's a unique enough name that it very well might be.
Player, so maybe.
Yeah, that we should be expecting some good mechanics if that's the case. And same with Nikius as well. I feel like I'm very familiar with that name as well. It's weird with esports, especially with games like Deadlock, that they're somewhat new, because if you cast it around different scenes and regions over the years, you do see these names pop up again and again. So that's really fun. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
And I hope they have some success here as well. I mean, they do have a couple of players with some previous competitive experience. Nico's played PUBG. A random dead dude played TF2. I'm not sure, Dan, if you were a TF2 fan, but that's where he kind of comes from. Whereas Avengers, they really have no esports background behind them, which I kind of find interesting, because it also, when you have a new game come around, typically you see a lot of, quote unquote pros or semi-pros from other games try to go into a new game to try to become a pro and become one of the best. And you generally have, people with massive backgrounds, but it's the players who have no background that I'm kind of really curious about, because you could have them completely stomp everyone at some point, especially if they're younger players looking at like Donk over in CS. Ridiculous what you can do with that kind of skill.
I think it's curious for Deadlock more than anything, because it's such a different game. So it's so unique compared to anything we've ever seen before, that you are going to get new and upcoming players, people that never dabbled in esports before, that realistically might take the scene by storm. And I just think, even if you look at the highest level, we don't have some of the craziest of aimers in some of our strongest teams in the world right now for Deadlock, but it's just because their mechanical skill is so good in terms of how they're using the abilities, their macro. There's so much that goes into Deadlock that I think it does breed a whole new type of player.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see exactly how just the teams shake out in terms of like what skills are most valued in the top level teams. We recently saw in the NA region with Hydronation maybe dropping, arguably their best mechanical, or maybe the best mechanical player in Deadlock, potentially in Lefa, to make a choice to prioritize teammates that are going to maybe work better in terms of the team and the shot calling. So definitely makes a lot of sense, especially with this current format of 4 lanes. It's a lot of chaos and a fast moving action. So the coordination is really paramount to success. So I could totally see that.
Well, speaking of action, we're getting one step closer. We're going to take a look at a head-to-head here between some of the most better, or I'd say the best performing players from each roster. Tornado for me, for Avengers, and Adam coming in from OT. And you can see kind of the signature heroes they were running over the course of the qualifiers. And just give some kind of information about this. We saw, Tornado, he was leading when it comes to souls per minute in Pacific, but he's also leading when it comes to kills per minute at 0.33 ahead of everyone else in these lobbies. But I think the interesting part between these two players is still the kill participation, whereas Adam being more of a team player, where Tornado looking at, I guess, for more of these like kind of solo kills in some of these lanes. However, the player damage, Tornado, even though he's first in souls per minute, first in kills per minute, he's got the 17th ranked player damage per minute out of Pacific, which is kind of ridiculous considering what 7 times 6, I can't do that math. There's not many players below him when it comes to this, at least ones that you can viably put up against him.
Yeah, I think it would make sense though, right? Especially on a shift player. I mean, once you commit, you commit, right? There's certainly some poking to be done with the dagger, but a lot of times once you're getting in with slice and dice and you're finishing up with the ultimate, like, you are taking the kill at that point in the lane. So a lot of times I think it's weird the way these things translate, and you need to a lot of times take a look at the hero as well. For something like a Wraith, like, you're getting a lot of poke damage out from cards, you get a lot of poke damage just coming out from Tesla bullets alone. So it is curious, and again, you got to mix and match that with the kill participation as well. They're both fantastic players, they just have different play styles.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of different playstyles in NA with regards to like the Wraith and how it's developed over time, more of like a backline, longer range Wraith versus the kind of more roamy in the mix Wraith. And it's a lot to do with the comps as well, which is, again, Deadlock's actually so fun because you can have so much diversity and now you can play each individual hero. I don't think I've seen that quite to this extent in any other game. But going into the picks and bans here, this could be super interesting, Jason, because again, like, different meta, different priorities region to region.
This is going to be weird. I'm going to tell you that. I spotted a couple of games where
there we go.
We had Holiday and Paradox not banned and also not picked in the first round. Instead, it was your Abrams and your Mo and Krill. And one thing we should say, looking at this region, it seems like they do tend towards picking up more of their bruisier heroes as their priority versus like pick heroes like your Paradox, like your Holiday, or potentially even carry heroes like Vindicta or Wraith. So with OT banning Shiv, it goes into exactly what you're saying, Blake. Take that away from Tornado. Don't let him get those resets.
I think it's a Warden next.
That was Savannah's fault.
Oh, a Magician.
Sinclair,
Why a Magician?
he's insane. You cannot take mid boss against him because it is impossible because of unless you have like I know because you can't even cleanse the debuff when you're in the rabbit. He's insane. He's ridiculous, and I'm not surprised to see it considering he's been I think permabanned in EU and NA as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's horrendous to play against. Absolutely no. It's just an odd one because I think when Nikius actually played on the Sinclair, it wasn't his craziest game ever, and there isn't a dedicated Sinclair player over on OT. So who knows?
Well, early pick on a Mirage isn't something with like that's too foreign, but it is interesting as well, given I guess Mirage still has that unique capacity for facilitating stuff like split pushing, like a lot of gun damage, really good in the early laning phase. So just like an all around a great opening pick. I think the interesting thing that we usually look at is you often get the Paradox opener or having the holiday opener as well. We definitely don't see the 7 openers.
What is happening, bro?
Because the high priority, because you don't have many of a very important aspect, which is that initiation.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. I mean, having someone with pick potential like Paradox is super important. You do have a lot of it. I mean, if you want to build into Mo and Krill with your Phantom Strike, like that, it does the trick. But then a lot of times you're building Rescue Beam on the Kelvin to pull him back. But that's a lot of steps when you could just have a Paradox.
Well, to be fair, they do have a 100% win rate on 7. But seeing 7 picked over Paradox, over Holiday, over Wraith, like this hurts my head a little bit, Dan. But I'm not going to discount it at all because they have fared pretty well on it recently.
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting aspects too, right, of how the fights might actually play out. Because if you have comps that are more to do with like grouping up, having a bunch of front line, grouping up, and just trying to like barrow down objectives as quickly as possible. But 7 is actually very good in those comps, and you can get great value out of the ult if you're able to force fights in the open areas around the objectives. Now 7 gets a lot more value. It's just we've seen 7 now, and just in the very last week in EU and NA, teams actually prioritize him well and play him well. But previous to that, it was a little bit of it's hard to find this pacing between the farm and participating in fights.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. Yeah, the Kelvin. Sorry. The Kelvin. I'm sorry. I really want to talk about the 7, the Warden. We're having a good time. Got a Geist as well, which is a really strong pick at the moment. But the 7, the Warden's an interesting duo just because you're trying to shut down one or the other, and especially with the Warden, I'm pretty sure on Avengers side, the way they play the Warden is Majestic Leap Warden as well. So you're gonna have to invest stuns, disables on that Warden, but then you can follow it with a 7 ultimate as well. So a lot of times you kind of circumventing having to buy that unstoppable early because you've got to do one or the other there, which is interesting to me.
All right, so then the Kelvin and the Geist. I mean, Kelvin, typically when we see that, Dan, over in EU and NA, well, at least in EU, we're going to see that followed up with ideally a pocket on the other side, since it always seems to be one of the good counters to his ultimate. Except we're seeing a Viscus, which I don't hate. I think Viscus has kind of come into his own. And he's been in favor, out of favor. The only thing I'm surprised to see with it pick, though, is there's no, like, hard hero to counter on the other side. There's no Vindicta or something you have to worry about to allow that cube to really be impactful. And we don't even have Paradox picked yet either, so that makes it even more interesting. But we always see the holiday ban come through, which I'm happy to see and kind of
playing with fire.
The thing is, if OT leave Paradox open, are they actually going to play it?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you, really, at this point? I mean, it is playing with fire, leaving Holiday open for that long, and then no one picks it. I don't think there was a dedicated Holiday player on either team, so that's possibly why they waited so long. I think you see Holiday players over on mid and HB more.
I think it's, for me, I'm thinking a lot about Lash at the moment, because again, if we do get this like heavy frontline position, like a Lash, a Dynamo, like these like huge AoE ults can be really game changing for those team fights if that's the kind of style the opponents are playing. Now, I'm not super familiar with the way that the strategies are played out. If we're going to see like lots of death balling, but those would be 2 really big picks. And the Infernus coming in. Another thing I'm super curious about Jason, because Jason, when we're following EU and NA, we've seen Infernus had that a lot of early popularity, but it really seems to have fallen off quite a lot in terms of just overall, like just for the position of that DPS.
Yeah, I think people have kind of shied away from it. They went like a little bit more bruiser heavy. Like we see a lot more guys being played in general. 7, like you said, coming back into the mix. We'll see a lot of like Wraith, Yamato, even some Abrams, and even lately some Lash when it comes to the solo lane. So I'm not too surprised to see it kind of fall off when it comes to like EU and NA. but I kind of do like they have like a decent comp here. Infernus can kind of go extremely deep. If a Lash gets picked up as well here for Avengers, you have a really nice wombo combo with like the Last Stand. Seven can throw a stun on himself, so when they land, they get stunned right back up. Combusted Combustion as well. They do have, in my so far at least, a decent potential for a wombo combo. But honestly, I'm looking at OT, and to me, it's just like, this is just kind of like a standard comp you're going to see in EU that is always so successful that I'm already leaning towards them.
You kind of throw in everything in the kitchen sink of the wall with Avengers comp at the moment. I mean, the Seven, the Ward, and the Infernus there's a lot of heavy hitters there, but if you've got more of a consolidated squad over a lot on OT right now with the Mo and Crow, Wraith, Eddie Guys, Kelvin, Mirage, it feels well-rounded, right? It does feel like Avengers comp at the moment is pretty front-ended. So what they realistically need now is a bit more, something like a Paradox, which would be nice to see, which is now going to make that team much easier to play, especially being able to get picks off early and then just fully commit to that wombo combo that you were talking about earlier. That's going to be difficult to deal with. So again, there's going to be a lot of peel happening over on the side of OT, and it's really lucky they're able to get that Kelvin and the Mirage out early, because the Tornado is very good at peel, so is the Dome.
Dan, if I were to say to you before we started today that Paradox is going to be played in the 5th position, would you ever believe me, man? I don't know if I would have believed myself.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, it's just, we're just so conditioned at this point to see him just be 100% first pick or first ban. Well, I mean, it's actually looking more normal though overall. I think just like the ordering of stuff, I think was more so, I think what was surprising, but it's definitely fleshed out to a comps that feel like they make a lot of sense in terms of what you're approaching. You know, of course we've got the pocket there. You mentioned that previously, Jason, for the anti-Kelvin, but Ivy, the interesting thing is I was expecting Ivy to go for Avengers, but double support, we don't see that very often in the other regions. Very rare. Are
we going to see double support though?
Or you mean like a gun Ivy situation?
I'm thinking maybe potentially a gun Ivy to come through. I mean, obviously one thing we talk about a lot when it comes to these drafts is having a decent balance between like gun damage and spirit damage, but they have the spirit damage out of Geist. They have obviously some spirit damage out of Ivy and Wraith, and then Mirage does a little bit here or there on top of that. I don't know. I feel like a Vindicta or a Grey Talon would have been a nice kind of like follow-up for OT to kind of round out their composition, especially when you get them going early with the Mo and Krill. You know no one's going to get to the backline against you that easily. The only thing you have to worry about, obviously, is the swap coming through. But I guess we'll see how it's going to work out.
Yeah, Nikis actually plays Kudzu Bomb Ivy. Doesn't play gun Ivy in the games that I saw, at least. There's Refresher, Improve Reach, Divine Kevlar as well, so very much just get eyes in the sky essentially on that Ivy. So I think that what you could say for OT is just a ton of peel, but it's a question if you could really peel away what is coming for you over on the side from Avengers.
So before we let you go here, Dan, looking at both these compositions, is there sort of a window that you're expecting one of them to have to be successful in if they want to take this match?
I think OT, especially some of the picks, is going to scale a bit better into the late game. They've got a pretty well-rounded comp, so I think for them, they just need to just be like even going into the mid game, and they should probably pull ahead. I think Avengers have to play the objective game and try to get ahead early by just hammering on objectives, taking those open fights with the front line that they have, using those Warden ults, using those 7 ults, and that's going to be, I think, the win con for them. For me, is getting ahead on objectives early and then carrying that advantage into the mid and late game.
One thing I always look at when it comes to Paradox, thinking back to one of the prior DFNs we've had, a Paradox, if you get into late game, doesn't really matter what your comp can do, you can win a match just from one really great swap. I can't remember the team off the top of my head, Dan, but it was a swap on a Lady Geist and then into a Dome, and they're able to kill the Geist before they could do a single thing, and then they had a 6v5, and it was a relatively easy finish from there. So I don't know. I want to see how successful it's going to be, because Paradox, it's the most played hero when it comes to EU and North America. It's definitely like the most picked, most banned for sure. And it's tough to go against a very good Paradox. As you already get an Ass Man comment in there. Nice. Love to see it.
I mean, you got to throw it in at the start.
I mean, this is the only time we're like allowed to curse, right? Like, it's his name.
I know, right? I don't think the way that he's dropping the ellipses on the end there, though, I don't think you can shame a man called Ass Man. I think he's past shame at this point.
Well, as we do take a quick look here, a little pause coming as people are going to be reconnecting. We can kind of get an idea of who's going to be over towards what. So we have Seal going to be on the Paradox. Looks like Cake going to be on the Viscous. Assman going to be on the 7. Assman with his balls. It's going to be really interesting if he goes that build. And then we see Hansi on the Warden. What? Yeah, if he goes ball build 7.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, I don't think it's going to happen, though.
But if it did, it's going to lead to some great little clips here. But Dan, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I'm just going to be really interested to see this. For me, this is a journey of discovery to see what the pacing is like in this region on all of the team fights, and just like when you're looking to take the objectives. And again, for me, the objective timing is going to be huge for Avengers success. So if they can do well in the early game here and in this early laning phase to be able to build into that quickly, that's what I'm hoping to see. So I'll leave you with that for now.
Okay, well, some of our matchups coming through here, Blank. We do have 7 up against Mirage over in lane 4. Inferno's up against the Wraith over in lane 1. I'm looking towards this kind of Paradox Warden combo over in lane 3 up against the Mo and the Ivy. Definitely some kill potential coming through with that Binding Word plus the Kinetic Carbines.
Yeah, I think that it's a good idea with how they switch things up there. I mean, Paradox Warden is a horrendous lane to go into, especially once they both hit 3k. Binding Word into swap is horrible, but at least having a Mo and Krill who's got a lot of escape potential, Stoneform on the Ivy, there is a lot of ways to get out of some nasty scenarios, right? And also, these two players can just shove the lane, Kudzu Bomb into Scorn, the side packs on the jungle. This is a way they can keep themselves ahead and just not have to interact with the Warden or the Paradox.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I look over towards lane 4 and Assman, and honestly, he's going to be under a lot of scrutiny here because of the lane shot potential out of OT in lane 3. But speaking of potential, kills coming through. Somehow able to survive. Well, never mind. Of course, I'm gonna jinx it. Hans gets the kill into him. Nice little flash thrown in last second, and they do get a kill on the Nikos at the same time. So Avengers already off to a strong start.
Yeah, it's a killer parry that happened off the distance. We saw disaster happening right in front of our eyes. You might have had to have your glasses on to see it, but right at the back end there. So great stuff there from the lane. And that's just going to make things horrible, because I think they had a chance if they let that lane play out. And realistically, a lot of the kill potential came in at 3k for both the Warden and the Paradox. The fact that we're able to get an early lead like that is horrendous. You never want to let a Warden off the leash early in a game. That's just going to lead to some disastrous moments later on. And I think for Ivy as well as the Mo and Krill, it's only going to get worse. And Nan goes down here to a random dead dude. So at least one lane is not doing too badly.
Yeah, something to help get them back into this one, because it looks like Cake might be going down here. He's going to just rush him down, and a random dead dude going to get Cake as well. So 2-for-2 trade when it comes to lane 2 and 3 here for both of these two teams. Honestly, something I was trying to get into when it came to lane 3 before the kills came through was I was expecting, because of the lane push potential that OT has, that's really easy ganks on Assman, especially when you get your 3k. And I feel like you can really get Sire snowballing, where it becomes that like split pushing threat, and really kind of keep Avengers in line when we get to these like mid to late game engagements, when this macro play is really going to be important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just means you can constantly move across, and Mirage is going to push the lane hyper fast, but especially just with Power Surge in general, you're going to push the lane passively, so likely they'll be able to send themselves across. So as long as Sai is able to hold his own, which he should be able to, because Mirage does feel like a little bit of a natural counter there to the 7. You can't ever really get a strong play off with the static charge, because you can always tornado that thing.
And the cube coming through to help keep Cake up alive, and somehow Mucka is just not being punished here. He's just skating along on the high ground, trying to chase in towards the pocket, and Anon's gonna be very low in HP, and he's gonna go down from this one. A little bit of a turnaround potentially coming through, but there's the Geist to help defend. Random dead who goes for the parry, but unfortunately there's no melee to be had, and they're gonna get the double off the back of this. Cake and Anon both going down, and OT, their lane 2 is really helping them carry through.
Yeah, it's so needed as well. I mean, at that point for KKF, it's either a disengage or you just have to recommit to the Geist instead, because the Kelvin was leaving. It wasn't like he was going to get back. He'd already used the Ice Path, so he wasn't able to reposition there. Again, that's just a case of a little bit of tunnel vision coming through from KKF, which is unfortunate. But for OT, this is, like you said, extremely important. Getting a Kelvin farmed early obviously doesn't always feel like the craziest thing in the world to happen to you, but a Kelvin can have a huge amount of impact on the map. It's just in terms of ganks as well as pressure with the laser beam he's able to bring out. So yeah, an interesting one for sure. And again, having that front line on the Geist is gonna make it a little bit more difficult for the team to get too aggressive, because once you start getting that swap online, you can't really fully commit to her.
And I do kind of wonder what kind of build Muck is going for, as I believe I see the Frozen Shelter just being used over in lane 2. Because we could see, you know, the Ice Path build. We just get around the map very quickly to help assist. I know Piggy, I believe, talking to him while watching some of these ADP qualifier matches, saying he's experimenting with a couple of different builds where you actually don't even go to your level 2 on your Frost Grenade. So you don't have the healing potential out of it, but you do have a lot of gank potential, not to mention the ultimate online. But speaking of that, we do see the paradoxical swap come through. Seal's going to be locked under tower by the combo here, Blink.
Yeah, and that's what you want to see, realistically. But immediately in comes the Warden as well, so Last Stand will be taking down Nikuse, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Again, I think this is just partly because the guys over on Slatted as well as the Nikuse are a little bit behind of their lane opponents. In comes Pocket, a lot of damage done. Random Dead Dude goes down, and KKF continues to bring the pain, and that's another out of there. Not what I expected. Honestly, not what I expected.
Just some redemption for Avengers on lane 2. I mean, the thing is, they knew Mucka's Frozen Shelter was down from a prior fight, which was the perfect opportunity to go, especially with the afflictions in there. But I feel like looking at the grand scheme of things here for OT, one of the biggest kind of unfortunate parts is the fact they're not able to gank on lane 4 with Aspan. But the problem is, I guess, or it's not even a problem, is that Sire's able to handle him by himself. Telekinesis is going to be coming through onto Tornado. Looks like both these two players just going to be backing away, not committing for the kill just yet, as we did have, it looked like, Anon and Cake rotating over to lane 1. But so all in all, 6 minutes in, pretty even lead here between the two teams.
Yeah, I mean, Avengers are slightly ahead, but it's really not by much, let's be honest, right? At the moment, it is just a case of trying to get yourself back into this game. And I think Anan, as well as KKF, have done not a bad job at all. The fact that Mucka is currently on 3.9k is sort of strange to me. Getting Cold Front nice and early for Anan means Pocket is able to farm pretty efficiently alongside with Enchanter's Satchel, as well as Cloak. So getting themselves into the game hasn't been too a big deal. So I would say here in lane 2, there's been a bit of a comeback come through. I would have thought that having the Kelvin and the guys online early would lead to some huge plays.
Swap and Slow and Hex comes through, but there's no follow-up, unfortunately. The Binding Word will go off, but the protection is going to be there for Slaughter to keep Nikos alive. But you can just see on the map here, Blink. I mean, it's all aggression out of OT. They're keeping things pushed up consistently here, trying to make sure there's no chance for Avengers to push back through and obviously look for some ganks themselves. Really keeping them in check and not really giving them the freedom around the map here as we're getting close to that 10-minute mark when we get these first buffs online.
Yeah, just one curious thing though, I quite like the fact that honestly, on the side of Avengers, Hansi's a lot of times using his Binding Word on the Mo and Krill after the Paradox swap, which is interesting because I think a lot of times it has been Slatted coming in to sort of save Nikuse from those Paradox swaps. So it does put them both under a lot of pressure, and I think chained up Mo and Krill a lot of times is quite easy to burst down. Again, in we go, as well as the Last Stand. This should be another free kill. This has just been swap after swap after swap in this lane.
Just rinse and repeat, man. Every time the swap's up, they go for the fight. He hits the swap as well. More importantly, it looks like Seal's been at 100% accuracy on this one as the gang's gonna be coming in onto lane 1. Looking for that Infernus' Tornado. Just as a sliver of HP is able to escape, mostly because you had his teammate Anon able to come in and help him out.
Early invest into Paradoxical Swap as well. Like, I think he's put quite a few points into that thing and might have already got improved cooldown. I'm not sure on that side, just purely because honestly it's a 36-second cooldown right now. It's very, very short in that lane, which makes things quite terrifying for both players. I don't think the Mo and Krill quite has Fleetfoot just yet, and naturally Ivy is fairly slow as a character until she picks up enduring speed. Oh, good bait, good bait.
Oh, but it doesn't seem to matter. He doesn't need the stun to actually hit the swap, and Nico's going to go down yet again. Slat, in the meantime, has been locked down by the Binding Word. And another kill. Rinse and repeat here for Avengers, constantly picking up kills every single time this ultimate's online here from Seal.
Yeah, he just read him like a book there, which is unfortunate. I mean, you hit the kinetic carbine in a space like that and you drop the wall, you're assuming that the swap's coming out straight afterwards, right? But instead there is a slight delay before that swap comes through, and even so that swap was very well placed. I mean, I did not expect it. In comes the Mo and Krill combo. It's not going to do anything too much, and again it's actually Slide who takes the massive amount of damage coming through on that side.
Not sure, actually, the use of that combo there, because there was absolutely no follow-up. It seems like the communication might have been lacking. And Mucka, he might be the one to fall from this one. Just 1 HP left. He's going to go down. Tornado just trying to survive. And while Random Dead Dude should be finishing him off. So Tornado's going to fall for the first time, I believe, in this game.
Gang called away on that side. I mean, Anand does go pick up the slack, but I think for the pocket, it might be a little bit difficult to stop him from taking Yellow Guardian, which he ends up doing. So lane 1 does go down. Saya takes quite a bit of damage from the Storm Cloud, but that's on cooldown now for quite some time. And Saya should be able to get back into the mix. CL does go down to Nikus, though. He's back and forward here, Jason, a lot of times.
Oh, I mean, Mucka's going for the gank now. Again, the follow-up going to be delayed here out of the Mirage. The dive in with the cold front as well. Assman's going to be going back to spawn here. Gosh, so many things I want to say, but I'm really riding that line right now. I'm a little bit scared. As it comes too close for comfort, Assman will fall. And that's another death for him. But we do see a return kill onto a Random Dead Dude.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not cracking here, Jason, because the pressure is a lot. The pressure is a lot, and we're doing our best. We are doing our best.
I just wanted to see Maidong up against Assman. That would be a really interesting battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Going against them, I would probably say.
You know, they actually renamed. They're no longer Maidong anymore.
I know. It's unfortunate. It really is. I was quite sad when I saw it. I was like, is that Maidong and not anymore in my games? I think they should have kept it up for a little bit longer, honestly. I was quite upset
coming through. Decent damage. Yeah, it was Uncle's fault. Their coach. Quote, unquote, coach. That's going to be the Hubon coming through. Looking for a fight here on lane 2. Probably the biggest fight we've had so far in this actual match. And Cake's going to continue to go for the chase, but he's low on HP, and the combo comes through. They should be able to finish him off here off of this one. Going to roll away to his death. So a good little turnaround here for OT as they look to push themselves.
Yeah, hella dangerous, honestly. For a lot of times, telekinesis comes through on towards Honzi. One more card should do the trick, and that is it. But yeah, I think for when you're playing KKF, and especially if you're going into the ball, like, you're getting a huge amount of resistances, but it doesn't mean too much against a random death dude who can just constantly put damage amp on you with the daggers. And Assman once again is under pressure coming through from Mucka. Stops him off on the zip line as well, right at the top there. Looks to head back up again. CL is here for the backup, but Mucka not giving up easy. Now has to get out. No ice path available to him.
That's a squeaky bum moment if I've ever seen one here for Assman. The resupply, I guess the teammates able to come through in time, but they're going to be losing out on a lane 1 Walker potentially. OT trying to go for the big push here with Slatted and Adam trying to gain some ground as they're the only team to take any objectives. Avengers, 0 Guardians to their name, and this is where we're going to see the solely just drastically change in the favor of OT as that Walker will be falling. And not to mention, OT are also running the urn at the exact same time here, so great Mako play coming out of this team from Australia.
Yeah, I mean, taking the walker down as well and having efficient and easy access to the urn through Nikus is massive. Now they're starting to get that pick potential on board. Great swap there. Prevents Honzi from having too much impact in that front line. And the Scorn comes through into another combo. Might have to give his life here for it, but will get out indeed. And OT is starting to take things away. Assman had been swamped in this lane for quite a while, but finally is able to get something a little bit done here, but still no flex slot available to them. All the while, OT is getting further and further ahead, and with that soul lead, they're going to start filling out those slots as they can. KKF with a good roll down, but again, like I said, versus the guys, it's not the best of ideas. Luckily, is able to pick up Slatted, and I think it will have to be a random dead dude getting out of there. So low, should be able to pick him up.
Oh, he lost track of where he was going. Anon, looks like he will be to survive. He's being chased down. He's going to be locked in between 2. Someone kill him?
Playing Divine Barrier. He's alive.
Hello?
Sticking it.
I mean, the great escape. 7 comes in. Aspen saves his life. But at the end of the day, though, OT, they get a Walker in lane 1. They get some good damage onto the lane 2 Walker. They get an urn turn in. And they got, I believe, about 2 kills. And all in return was just 2 Guardians and I believe 1 death for Avengers able to get against OT. So a massive trade here for OT in this one. Still rocking almost a 10k lead here between the 2.
Yeah, it was pretty efficient. I mean, at one point it was around 59k to 71. It's still looking a little bit bad for Avengers, but they brought it back enough. And I think they're in a position now where team fighting could be a potential. They have been on the receiving end of it for quite a while now, where they haven't really had 6 members up at the same time. And CL's been caught off in that early fight early was a huge detriment to them. Not having that paradoxical swap up and available is quite bad. And you can see right now, OT is just trying to maintain that advantage because Mo and Krill, Kelvin, and the Ivy has just this squad, this pack moving around. It is pretty dangerous to play around with, especially with Stoneform into combo, as well as the slowing Ice Beam. It's hard to get away from them, and they're trying to work that advantage here.
Oh, Cake, he's dead. There's no way. He's going to get the cube off. The rotation out of Aspen is going to be here. Goo Ball as well going to be used. I'm actually surprised to see him surviving for so long. Eventually being locked in by the frozen shelter will mean he meets his demise, and potentially another flex slot being taken for OT. If you're Aspen, you got to be careful. There's still 3 people knocking on the front doors. The storm cloud's going to come in to try to deter them away, and it will be enough. Not to mention Hansi is just pushing forward, gets himself a kill.
Yeah, a bit over aggressive there. I think as soon as you see the storm cloud go out, I think you just have to call it quits at that point in time. There wasn't a lot of information on the map there coming through for OT, and I think realistically the alarm bell should have been going off in their head. Still actually 1v1ing, but they do get the walker off the back of that. That's a really good escape there coming through from Adam. We'll see if he survives to tell the tale, but the soul urn is now picked up by Hansi. Going to try and take that one across. A lot of souls as well being dropped on the ground here. We should swing things.
I don't know how I felt though actually about that push that happened on lane 4 into the storm cloud, as Adam will fall eventually. I feel like if you're OT, you just do what you did with the very first urn. Pick up the urn, force them to either defend it, or they give away another walker, and you pretty much lose nothing while at the same time getting the urn turn-in. Obviously it played correctly. They end up losing some players. Yes, they get the lane 2 walker, so they get the flex slot at the end of the day. And I guess technically right now, Avengers are playing into that hand of trying to look for a push into the turn-in for the extra souls. But we can still see OT keeping the pressure on, and neither team really committing fully to this turn-in location, considering Hansi is just bringing the urn back towards base.
Yeah, right now OT has just been trying to maintain that advantage that they've had for quite a while here to just pressure out Avengers. And they have been moving around as kind of small units, as 3-mans. I think that what they have done by doing that, though, especially having a Mo and Krill, an Ivy, as well as a Kelvin, they've lacked on the jungle a little bit here. Yes, they've got quite a few objectives, but now it's up to them to defend it. I think the best thing right now for OT is the fact they still have 2 Guardians up and available, so they have not given up a single flex slot so far, but they need to press that advantage. It's a good thing from Hansi, the fact that he kind of just took the soul urn and is just now walking it around the map, because that would be the big changer here coming through for OT. Massive fight starts off here, Jason, and a great storm cloud to finish.
Able to catch one with Sire going down, but the rest of OT going to be on the run here, heading back towards lane 3. This might be the opportunity for Avengers to get the urn turn. You can see them flexing out. In the meantime, you can see Random Dead Dude's going to be heading over to lane 1 to try to keep the pressure on. So with that big commit out of Avengers, pretty much 4 ultimates being used out of their 6, they only get themselves 1 kill and haven't gotten any real estate off the back of that, as KKF might try to go for the turn-in. I mean, that's, I think, a very smart play of OT to back away as soon as possible, considering if you lose the fight there, you're going to be losing mid-boss.
Yeah, I think they absolutely have to. Good swap into the air there. That might lead to a stun over towards OT. Luckily, it's a pretty decent frozen shelter. I don't think it'll keep him alive for too long, though. Nikus does go down. They're desperate to get this walker under control, and Adam will find another walker over in Parkside. There's a bit of a problem, and he is just shredding these walkers now. That's yet again another flex slot, up to 3 now versus the 0 coming through for Avengers. And although that soul swing was a little bit in the favor of Avengers for a short time, now it's back on the side of OT. They're looking to go for a fairly aggressive mid-boss here as well, Jason. And to be honest, a lot of the lanes have been pushed in. Does Avengers decide to try and challenge this? I think Inferno still has soul up, so there's a potential.
Maybe it took a little bit longer for that to happen, for the actual mid-boss to go down. Maybe they could have went for the contest, but instead going to give it up for free. Trying to push themselves here, trying to gain some Guardians. Lane 1 being pushed out by Hansi to get that first flex slot unlocked for Avengers, which honestly at this point you can see is desperately needed. Tornado has no slots left to buy up any single item. I thought that Guardian would have gone down already, but it takes a little bit longer than expected. And now the rotation's coming through. Nico's trying to lead the charge to cut them off.
He's got the reinforced plates on that bad boy. There is a decent ult coming through there from Nikos.
Is it Nikos or Nikos? Because
Nikos? Nikos? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Couscous, yeah, I can understand it.
Is there a second Coos in his name? I don't know.
No, but like, isn't it? Coos with a U, isn't it? Coos. No. Yeah, they're both U's. I don't know.
Yeah. What are you saying?
Just whatever Nikos, but whatever we want to call it.
We can go Nikos. I'm down.
I don't know. I kind of you go Nikos, I'll go Nikos now. Let's just change it up.
All right. We'll confuse everyone in chat. I respect it. You know.
Well, but we'll always say ass man the same way. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll never change that. Ass man. Yeah.
With the rejuvenator, it's like OT is going to be going for a little bit of an increase in souls here. Just going to turn this in the meantime. Obviously, with no walkers to take, it's very risky for OT to try to push into the base, especially without everyone there. But you have to look towards Seal. Like, knowing that the urn's being ran, this is an opportunity to hit a swap and go for a kill.
Dude, it's a curious one because I think a lot of us were a little bit concerned about the Moen Krill, Kelvin, as well as Ivy pick, but I think they've done such a wonderful job on it. They have made sure they've taken full advantage of the fact that these specific heroes are so fast at getting around the map, and with the lane clear they have with Kutsu Bomb as well as Scorn into Burrow, every single lane has been ultra pushed this entire game. It's been very hard for Avengers to do anything, and this comp has been significantly strong. A whiffed paradoxical swap should lead to these base guardians going down fairly shortly. It's not likely they can stop them. Even if they do die here, they've got the rejuve to fall back on.
You see, still just pushing up those lanes over into lane 4, trying to get some more of these base guardians. It seems they're really hesitant to go for the engage to get this first shrine. Being very respectful. But the thing is, the longer they take, the easier it is for Seal to get his ultimate back up to look for that pick potential. They're just hoping that their minions are enough to shove down a lot of this control, a lot of these left objectives.
Last stand thrown in, static charge on it as well to try and slow them down. This is what they really needed. They needed a full commit, but the rejuve's still up and they have to back out. Telekinesis gets quite a few of them. In comes the drop as well from the Ivy. The 7's in the air, doesn't last long as he's electrocuted by the Tesla bullets. Much similar way to his backstory. A swap into a combo. That's not going well for you, lad.
That's a lot of ultimates thrown in there with the frozen shelter on top of it to make sure they can pick up that last player. I mean, realistically, they're not going to be able to close the game out here because of the respawn timer with the patron going down. But a lot of damage being done here, a lot of souls being built up. 20k lead now for OTs. They're looking to probably leave the base off of this, take down every single objective they possibly can. Or are they going to stick around and commit for this?
I mean, this feels dangerous to me. Banning word is out, but they should be able to use the 2. Drops it a little bit too late there, and Adam will go down for it. I think he was trying to be a little bit too cheeky. There is a full commit going on there. Slatted will go down, and the rest of the team will have to drop out. But there is a back and forth going on here, Jason.
And I'm not sure what's going on. I can't believe that a random dead dude's still able to push through here. Divine Barrier comes through to save him. Not to mention the rescue beam. They're still keeping the pressure on. That's 2 players now down. The soul change is still up for random dead dude.
You know, there's a potential to finish here. There is a potential to finish. No ults available, but I think they are going to back out. I think without Adam, I think they're concerned about their speed at which taking down that patron, so that's fair enough. I think at this point as well, the fact that you still got 4 walkers up, realistically, if OT wanted to wait this game out a little bit longer, they could just farm and get all those slots filled because they have the 4 compared to the 1 from Avengers. Wait for next rejuve and then push in, because the big thing for Avengers right now is that their full commit is unreal strong, right? You know, combustive concussion, the last stand, into storm clouds, swap, as well as affliction. That is a nasty team fight recipe. Unfortunately, if you drop all those ults prematurely into a team rejuve, then they come back and then just fight you off the back of it. Obviously, OT will have to make them work for those ultimates. It should just be a finish off the back of the next rejuve. So right now, all OT needs to do is go into a defensive position.
What's really rough is looking at Seal. I feel like he has probably the toughest job right now is to look for a swap that's going to make sense. But I'm worried that if he swaps either he's going to be locked down in a frozen shelter. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be locked down, or the rescue beam's going to be there to stop it in time if OT are grouped up. It's a really difficult position to be in. Obviously, Anon needs to look for an early affliction to try to open things up in this fight. They have the pick potential, but I feel like OT is just going to have so much healing, not to mention the sand, the pocket sand that Slide's going to throw at you. That I don't know if they can really kill anyone except maybe Adam.
Yeah, well, even Adam has 2 for an escape, so it's a tough one, and it does feel almost
a 3-second window to kill him then, I guess, because he's going to be silenced for the 3 seconds. I don't know if he has debuff remover or cleanser to get rid of it, but it's yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, it's who do you kill? Who do you swap in? And there's really no great target.
Yeah, again, you swap in the Lady Geist, and at this point, I imagine she's got her ult maxed anyway. So even if you swap the Lady Geist into the masses, she doesn't have to be low to be using swap, because she silences everyone within a 15-meter radius, which could be deathly for Avengers. You swap in Slatted, he's just going to combo one of you. Mucka's got the frozen shelter, and it is starting to feel a little bit, Jason, at this point, that the composition of the team was very much in the direction of, go on, pick Paradox. You want to do it.
Well, they did, and it's not working out. Neither it is for Anon as he gets caught out. Sire's going to finish this one off. Those you got to hit just barely on the edge of the paradoxical swap, and now being down a player, being down their pick potential, it's only a matter of time, I feel like, before OT closes this out.
Yeah, CL at least sniffed Slatted breath with the after image from the paradoxical swap, but that was about it. And honestly, I do think that this could likely be yeah, this is what I thought they'd do. It's reasonable at this point. You just take Reju. There's one down. There's no affliction available. It is a little bit dangerous here. Again, another rescue beam thrown in, as well as KKF's ult early on the goo ball. And last stand?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's an overcommit.
I respect the push. I respect like trying to go catch them while they're leaving. But to not catch on to anyone, you're going to give up mid boss. Either you contest it, but you're going to be late to contest it, or you give it away and they shove your base in with amped up minions. But it looks like they will be going for the fight here. So it's going to be do or die time for Avengers. Not going to be stolen away as Adam secures it, but they're still going to fight nonetheless.
Slotted very low here, getting the rescue beam popped onto him, but will go down. 25 seconds left on him, but a huge amount of damage going through to the rest of the team. Telekinesis over onto Tornado. He's looking to finish them off. There is a quick getaway, but Binding Word actually pops early. It's not able to keep him up, but OT, Sire currently just ricocheting away, and the Mark is doing a huge amount of damage. Kutsu bombs down, runs straight into the face of Mucka, and this might just be the end of Avengers. KKF last left alive. 10 seconds on Adam, and I think this is clearing away the end of the game.
Oh yeah, everyone's now eliminated here for Avengers, and so will they be here in Deadlock Fight Night Pacific #1, brought to you by Intel and OT. They secure themselves a chance now at going up into the finals. Obviously, one more match to go through where they have to take on the winners of Maiden Deadlock and Happy Buffalo, but at least they get their first win of the event.
I mean, for OT, I think this was sort of an unexpected win for them. I think Avengers had come through those qualifiers extremely strong, but OT, I think they win with a very well-coordinated comp from their side. It looked a little bit dangerous to start there, Jason, but they brought it back in a big way.
I mean, they struggled. Like Nikus, and Mucka struggled when it came to lane 3. They were being punished constantly, even though they had the push potential. They were being shut down by the Paradox and Warden every single time Seal had that swap up, and yet they were able to stay alive long enough. Not to mention the Geist, actually it was the Geist and the Kelvin over in lane 2 that was able to help carry them through as well, winning their lane quite heavily. And then the side lanes, I guess technically Sire won up against Assman in that Mirage 7 1v1. But in the end, I mean, OT, I think they had better objective control. They had better macro play. They were constantly being aggressive, and there was no response out of Avengers, unfortunately.
Yeah, you go for this massive engage comp over on the side of the Avengers, and realistically you just want to get towards that end game, but it was just counter after counter after counter over on the side of OT. I love the way they played. I think it's been a while since I've seen the Kelvin, Mo, and Krill Ivy work together so well before, and again, it really did feel like they were begging the enemy team to pick Paradox under the assumption they had all the escape tools in the world, and that was their only initiation starter. I think once they caught one of them off guard with the static charge or the Binding Word, that's an easy team fight win. It just did not happen.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's bring in our analyst DDK back here to talk about this match, as Australia have been able to advance further and get into the best threes. Something we didn't really touch on too much, obviously, when it comes to best of one. One mistake could be costly. It could be you getting out of the entire tournament or giving a massive comeback to the enemy team. But what was your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting because OT, I feel like they actually left some openings for Avengers in the sense that they were prioritizing the macro really heavily insofar as like pushing the objectives and trying to like control the lanes, but they would then create all that control, but then they wouldn't sort of fall back onto their own jungle. So there's a big period of the match into from the early laning phase into like somewhat deep into the mid phase, where there's all these souls available, and they weren't sort of creating that like big gap that you would expect to come with all of the macro victories that they were getting. And so that to me, I was like, okay, there's actually maybe a chance here for Avengers to come back, because despite the fact that they were like 4 objectives ahead, they're running the urns, they're getting all of this value, they're only like 2k souls ahead. Because Avengers were farming their own jungle, because that's basically all they had left. So there were definitely some opportunities there. I think it was really interesting. You know, it would be really interesting to see if they're going to be able to clean up that macro in the future matches, because if they do, I mean, they're going to look really strong. And I actually felt like they played the comp like really effectively. I love the points that you guys made with regards to how Paradox was essentially disabled. That's something that I was going to mention as well. So overall, definitely a pretty good showing from OT. A good sense of like how to play the comp. Just some of those extra kind of like just chilling and just like hitting up the jungle would have been the only kind of thing I would have loved to have seen other than that.
You know what I want to see, Dan? Who was your player of the match presented by Intel from this first match today?
Yeah, so this is like very hard to choose, and sometimes it's like this with Deadlock because it's absolutely a team effort overall. But I really liked Adam on the Wraith. You know, Wraith is often going to be a call out. You have to have your eyes on the Wraith player because Wraith has such an important impact all across the game. Obviously scales insanely well into the late game, but Adam did a really good job, I felt like, roaming and chasing down kills, finding the ganks, getting the value here. You can see like I think a couple card tricks coming out to like to finish off the Warden here, but just like doing executing the playstyle that you expect from a Wraith. And so that's really important. And so that was one of the reasons why I chose Adam here, because the thing is, it's very hard to ZP, because you could have made, I feel like, an argument for quite a few players. So I don't know if you're with me on the did I call you ZP, Jason?
You did call me ZP.
Oh my God.
I'm never talking to you ever again.
Oh, Jesus.
How dare you give Jason such a big compliment? But I'm not here.
I don't drink Diet Coke. It's so gross.
How do you feel about the Wraith? Did I pick the right MVP here?
I think so for the most part. The fact is, like, we didn't really see much of him in the early stages of the game. The time we really started to see him get going is when we were starting to see him push walkers, and he was shredding through them completely. But that final little clip we saw, actually, the telekinesis onto like 2 or 3 players is what cracked open the base of Avengers for OT to eventually get the win. So yeah, I can get behind it. You, Blank?
Yeah, I can. I mean, to be honest with you, I would have picked Sire, but now that we see the scoreboard, it just seems like I'm looking at the scoreboard and being like, look, the Mirage, so much damage, guys. But I think that he kind of played much more of a hidden role. I think Adam was really strong, and I don't think you can take it away from him, because I think your pick comes into a lot more than what Sire was, which was a team fight machine. But Adam was also there and crushing on the objective game. I don't think there was a single moment where he didn't take the opportunity on the map to pick up a Walker or a Guardian where he could. So I think I'd agree with you.
It is odd looking at the objective damage, thinking back to how the lanes played out, because Nikus and Slat were actually pushed back, or sorry, were actually dying a lot in the lane. And yet you look at the counterparts they're up against, and I mean, Seal has 1100 damage, Hanzi had 4800 damage, but that came from a lane 1 Walker and Guardian. I would expected AVG or Avengers to actually get more aggressive in that lane after picking up those kills, or potentially rotating to look for some kills somewhere else, but they didn't really use that as like a launch pad to get themselves some objectives.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that Nikos and Slatted still just continued to play the game, right? They just went for, they pushed the lane super hard. Yes, they died a couple of times, but it locked the Paradox and the Warden into that lane a lot. And as soon as Paradox leaves lane, you instantly know, because you're right up in their face. So that Paradox, the ganks just didn't come through as frequently as you might like. And I think that was one thing that they did really well. Yes, they sacrificed themselves a little bit, but it did mean the rest of the team could thrive. And especially when a random dead dude, as well as I think it was Mucka Mucka over in lane 3, the fact that they were winning there and could continue to win quite handedly, not having to worry about the Paradox, is a real boon.
Okay, well, before we do head to break, I want to kind of refresh you guys' memory of what's going to be coming up next. And Dan, I believe you and ZP will be casting this next match, which is going to be very exciting, seeing Made in Deadlock first. Seeing them play from South Korea, we know how good South Korea can be in many different games, but also the history of a lot of the individual players on that roster is quite insane to see them all come together to play in a new game together. But happy Buffalo as well. Any tidbits, anything you can tease us for before we get into that match later on?
Me? Oh, with ZP and I
well, you're casting it, so...
Well, I don't know.
I hope
the game hasn't happened yet, so we'll see what happens once ZP and I can pull out of the hat. But I'm just super stoked to see all of the players play and just see what hero stories we can help to build here in this region. So for me, it's a journey of discovery, Jason.
A journey of discovery. I like that. We're going to discover a break, and after that, we're going to be coming back with Made in Deadlock up against Happy Buffalo to see who goes on to take on OT in our semifinals. This is the Deadlock Fight Night presented by Intel, and we'll see you all in just a few.